your book discussing climate change, which is something I try to bring up pretty consistently to bring more awareness to it. And as you write in the book, it's great to make planet friendly choices. It turns out that the idea of urban footprints was invented by British Petroleum and one of the most deceptive PR campaigns, maybe ever. And then you go on to say that carbon footprints are intertwined with the structures around us. It'd be easier for people to use less energy if there were more electronic charging stations. And what I think is so interesting here is in these campaigns, as you write, wield cynicism. They point to the issue on climate change that we're all at fault, which is the same thing as saying no one is essentially at fault. And with that as an introduction, I wanted to use this to highlight the book because I think this is a great example of where cynicism could lead to doom. And if we decide to take a different approach to how we tackle climate change, it could be one of the greatest achievements we collectively have ever undertaken.
So I love that question and the way that you frame it. I struggle so many people with what you could call climate doomerism. That is, I don't just feel scared of climate change. I feel like there's nothing that we can do about it. And really, the story is already written. I know a lot of people feel that way. More people feel that way than ever. And younger people are especially prone to that. And again, super understandable. I think that doomerism often reflects cynicism, as you say, this idea that, hey, I care about this, but most people probably don't care about this. So maybe we're not going to be able to ever change this. The carbon footprint is one version of this, right? Really, climate change is largely produced by 100 or so major corporations and organizations. And yet we tend to be blamed for our personal choices, even though those choices exist in a broader context, right? It's hard for many of us to make the types of choices that would help the climate because we are living in cities or parts of the world where our lifestyles depend on carbon because corporations don't want to change that, right? They don't want to create charging stations everywhere. They don't want to make it easy to make more climate friendly choices. This is another example. We were talking earlier about how corrupt politicians benefit when people lose faith in each other. That's true of climate change as well. It turns out that if you ask people, what percentage of Americans do you think believe in aggressive policy to protect the climate? People will tell you it's about 30 to 40%. The actual number is 65% or higher, depending on the question. So we are taught basically to believe that most people don't care. And if we believe that most people don't care, then what could we possibly do to change our destiny? But it turns out that most people do care. And that's true of a lot of issues, by the way. I think that having faith in each other now is intimately tied to the hope that we can have for the future. If you look around more clearly and realize that you are not alone, that your desire for a more sustainable, equitable, peaceful, and connected world is actually a super majority position shared by most people in the country, most people on earth. That I hope can be deeply empowering. I can tell you that in your efforts to fight for this better future, you are not alone. And if you're not alone, then it actually makes much more sense to fight. I'm often told that hope is naive or that hope is not a strategy. And that's true. The second part, I don't think it's naive, but it's not a strategy on its own. But hope opens us to the possibility that the future could turn out better and that our actions matter. And when you realize that, in fact, the people around you are good for the most part and do want what you want for the most part, that is not a naive or a complacent feeling. That is a deeply actionable feeling, one that can lead us to fight harder for the future we want by realizing that it is, in fact, possible.